Hey everybody, Bill back here in the studio. So today we're going to be talking about something just a little bit different. What do you do when you have to write a piece of music for something, either a project or just for personal, fulfillment? You're just, you try to write a piece of music every day, and you simply have no ideas at all, nothing. There's no chord progressions coming to mind. There's no melody. There's no rhythmic figure or anything like that. What do you do in that situation? If you're like me, you've found yourself in that position in a number of different instances, either working for a client or working on a project, or again, like I said, just personal fulfillment. I have a thing where I try to write a piece of music every single day. It doesn't have to be great, doesn't have to be even a complete piece of music. Sometimes it's a complete arrangement and a complete thing. Other times it's just an 8 bar motif that I might use some point down the road. I never know what it's going to be sometimes. So, but I still try to write something every day. This morning I woke up and I was completely blank. I had worked about 14 or 15 hours yesterday on a project, gone to bed, and usually I wake up, I have some kind of a rhythmic idea or something comes to mind within the first few minutes of being awake, but today was nothing. And so I've been in that position before, so I have a little bit of a trick that I do or that I use. It's nothing earth shaking, it's nothing new. It's an idea that I gleaned from a number of years of just doing this, and then also a couple of ideas from people who are much more accomplished composers than I am, and this usually gets me jump started when I'm a completely blank canvas. So, anyway, I'm going to walk you through this process. It doesn't. I mean, it may not work for everyone. It may not work for you. It works for me. I use it in a number of different ways. I'm just going to show you one of them. We might do some other ones later on, but I'll take you from the very beginning of how the process works through to how I sort of get some musical ideas going and have enough material that I can actually build a piece from. And like I said, I don't know what the piece is going to be. It could be just a piece of programmatic music. Could wind up being something for a library. Could wind up being something for a project. But the idea is that at least I'm writing something. So I'm going to walk you through the process. Let's go. Okay, here we go. So this is a PDF that I exported. I created the file in Sibelius. I actually still am one of those people that use pencil and paper. I'm one of those guys. But I did put this into Sibelius, and I am starting to work directly from Sibelius. A lot of times what I do is I sketch things out, pencil and paper on a score pad, and then put everything into Sibelius to create the score. But my initial sketches often sometimes start with pencil. It's just been doing it for so long. It's just, that's the way I work. But anyway, here is, so this is the way it starts. Like I said in the intro, I woke up this morning, I had absolutely no idea what to do. And I have a thing where I made a deal with myself that I'm writing a piece of music every single day. I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm pretty determined to continue that streak, and so far I'm doing pretty good. And like I said, it doesn't have to be it's not a masterpiece. It doesn't have to be anything even in particular for any particular idea or any particular purpose. It's just the act of writing every single day, just the putting in the work. Some things are going to be good, some things are going to suck, some things are going to never see the light of day. That's just the nature of what we do. So anyway, today, no ideas. The only thing I said was, I think I'll write something in Aeolian. Just picked a mode at random. It could have easily been Lydian. It could have easily been anything else. For some reason, I guessed, I don't know, poured my tea and I was in an Aeolian mood. So without even thinking about the key, I just sat down and hit a D and said, okay, we're in D Aeolian. So here we go. This is the scale. Okay, F major scale starting on the sixth degree, essentially, if you want to look at it that way. But the thing that makes it Aeolian are these two half steps here, E to F, there's your Aeolian sound. Now, we're not going to worry about harmony. We're not going to worry about chord progressions. We're not going to worry about anything. We're just going to take this scale and I just start to play around and see what I come up with. Just using the scale tones, but trying to keep the idea of Aeolian tonality in my head, trying not to veer towards the major, the associated major scale or anything else. So after a few minutes of just kind of noodling around, and I literally do this, and the cool thing about this technique is you don't necessarily have to be able to read and write music. I mean, I'm showing it to you in manuscript like this, simply because that's where my brain works. But you can do this without having the ability to read and write music. You just open up your sequencer and just basically do what I'm doing. Even if you just look at the keys, right, and figure out what scale you want to use, and then play it in to your sequencer, and then start playing melodies or just noodling or something. Just hit record, let it run. I mean, hard drive space is cheap. Let it run and see what you come up with. Anyway, so this is something after a couple of minutes of noodling around I came up with. So here at letter A. Okay, not going to set the world on fire, but it fits the scale. It has the necessary sound. It tends to lean it's a little bit more happier sounding than your kind of typical, but it still fits within that realm. I liked it. That was enough for me, right? That's just a start. Again, it doesn't have to be anything great. So now I do this again. Now I come up with something a little bit different, trying to stay within the Aeolian scale. I'll start coming up with fragments of ideas. They can be rhythmic fragments, they can be melodic fragments. In this case, I started with rhythmic fragments, probably because I had been listening to some Vaughan Williams symphonies for the last few days, and there's a lot of rhythmic development that in a couple of the symphonies that I was listening to, so that's probably kind of ingrained in my mind. So then I just started, and keeping it very simple, again, right? Just a few notes here, but fitting, trying to fit here. And it looks like I made a little bit of mistake here. In bar 3, that should be F, D, C, B flat, A, but so I'll try and play it right. Okay, so. Okay, just let that go. I don't worry about it. I just think, okay, that works. That's something. That'll be something. I can turn it into something. Right? It doesn't matter. Okay, then I try to come up with another one. In this case, I was thinking of something that I might want to hear, maybe some lower woodwinds or maybe some violas and cello play, kind of a textural kind of thing. So we had this, I came up with this little thing here. Now, I did deviate one thing because for me, I like to take the original. Now I'm sort of into the process, right? So now I'm pretty confident with this. Now I want to start varying it a little bit just to get some harmonic interest going. So I start thinking of, well, let's take one of the tones of the scale and just move it a half step and use it as a passing tone, right? It's not going to be a chord tone. It's just either a neighboring passing tone, a neighboring chromatic tone, an escape tone, or something like that. Just a technique just to give a little bit of interest. So I did that with two. I took the second scale degree, which is E, and I lowered it a half step. And I took the fifth scale degree of the Aeolian, which is A, and lowered it a half step. Right? And so now we're going into a different mode. It doesn't matter which one, but by doing that, I've now shifted the harmonic sound of it a little bit, but you still have these notes that are the same. So this is the original scale, and this is what we have now. Right? So still 5 of the 7 notes are shared between the two. So then I just came up with something. Sorry about that. I am not a pianist, obviously, but we'll play that again. So just something, I could hear that just sort of bubbling underneath something, right? Not quite sure. That was okay. I mean, I didn't mind that, but I wanted a little bit more harmonic variation. I wanted a little bit more interest, something a little bit more dissonant, give it a little bit darker sound. So I stayed with altering the fifth scale degree from A to A flat, but I took the tonic of the first scale degree and lowered it a half step instead. So we went from D to D flat. So now what I had was right? Okay, so that's a pretty interesting sounding. What that really winds up being, and I'll get to this in a second, is it's really a hexatonic. It's really a hexachord, right? It's, if you look at it, if you look at the scale, starting on D flat, then we go to E, F, G, A flat, and then extended tones, B flat, C, back to D flat. And I'll get to this B natural in a second, and I'll explain my reasoning for it. But what you've got is a hexachord. A hexachord is 2 triads that do not share the same notes stacked on top of each other. So in this case, we have C major and D flat major. Okay, you guys have all heard that sound. It's used a lot, right? use it that way. Right, okay. Chick Corea, rest in peace. Anyway, so that opens up a whole bunch of different ideas. And this is, now remember, this is all still being derived from the original Aeolian scale. I just altered a couple tones. I just altered a couple notes, which you can't. There's no rules against doing that. There's nobody that says you can't do that. You just have to know what you're doing and why. So this little fragment came out here at C. Right? I like cycles. I like patterns. Could have easily been this. Right? Those are all within that hexatonic setup. With that in mind, then I created a scale based off the C major triad and the D flat major triad. So here we go, C, E, G, and then D flat, F, A flat. Now, these two tones, B flat and B, are simply there because they're logical extensions of this scale to get us back to the octave. What they also do is they also create dominant seventh chords if I add them to the two existing triads from the hex chord. So C, E, G, B flat is a dominant seventh, and D flat, F, A flat, B natural is another dominant seventh. Dominant seventh chords are great to have because they give you pivot points. You can modulate from dominant seventh chords. So my philosophy is adding a couple of altered tones to this hexatonic, 6-note scale. And now we have, when we get to figuring out harmony, we now have some ideas about how, some moves that we can make, right? Because then we can go. And now we're into F major or B flat, depending on where you want to go with that. So I'm getting ahead of myself, and so don't worry about that. Okay, so now working with just the hexatonic. Now I go back to the original idea that I did, and I just start creating little melody fragments. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be brilliant. They just have to be sort of staying within the parameters. So here at E, this is the first. Okay, got that nice half step movement. But then a nice minor sixth which kind of mellows it a little bit, and then up a fourth. So, and then the next one. Just simple little melodic fragments, but they're using, see, here is the third and the fifth of the D flat, the third and the fifth of the C, then the tonic of the D flat to the third, and then mixing, and then just going down the C major. That's all I did, using 6 notes. Here's another one. Now using some rhythmic ideas. Right, has a little bit of a flavor to it. Might be useful for something, but I liked this little rhythmic figure. Or actually, I played that wrong, sorry. That's something that I'm going to be able to use a lot, either bass movement, ostinatos, maybe brass textures or something like that. Something is going to present itself. Could even be a synth line or something like that that sits underneath there. Right? You just have to get little ideas going, and pretty soon the stuff will just kind of start to snowball, right? And so then I thought, well, I need an ostinato, something that's kind of cyclic. That could be something to have where the bass is, I can throw a melody on top of it, something, and I wanted to do it in a different time signature. So unfortunately, for some reason, it rendered out C sharp instead of D flat, but this is going to be the same thing. I'm going from D flat to C. Right, and all I'm doing is I'm just alternating, but I'm keeping the D flat to C. So the first two tones of the two hexatonic chords, and then moving back and forth between the remaining tones. So nothing earth-shaking, but on top of that, this idea might work at measure 40. So that's a nice little, just a little motif that I can play with. We can, that can be spun out a number of different ways. Again, we're just trying to get ideas down. We're not really worrying about constructing a whole tune or anything like that, right? So then the next thing I will do is now I'll start to think about harmony. What are my chords that are available to me from these? Now I've got two scales. They're somewhat related, but they have some dissonances which can create some interesting things. So what are my, what kind of chords do I have that are available to me? So if I isolate myself just to the Aeolian scale, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, I'm just going to build chords off of each scale tone, right? I'm not going to worry about anything other than just hearing what I've got available to me. And I'm going to use seventh chords. One, because I'm a jazz guy, that's where I came from. So seventh chords are in me. So the first chord is D minor seventh, right? Could easily be D minor, but we're going to go with D minor seventh. And then E half diminished. So what we've got is an E with a flat 5 and a flat 7, but it's not a diminished seventh. So then F major 7, then G minor 7, then A minor 7, then B flat major, and then using the extensions, and then we have C dominant, C7, sorry, and then back to D minor 7th. So, okay, now that gives me an idea of what kind of chords I have available to me just from that scale. So now I go and I take a look at the hexatonic scale, and what do I have available to me? Okay, so I'm going to stay with thirds in this case because it's easier with hexatonics. We've got C major, got D flat major, have E diminished. So remember we had E half diminished, 7th, E flat 5, E7 flat 5, half diminished from the other scale, right? F major, I'm sorry, F minor, and then G diminished. So we've got both of these available to us. Right? There's E. Down to A minor. So that's a possible chord progression just by moving, just taking the one note on top, moving it down a half step to take in the G diminished with the E on the bottom, and then resolving the top two notes down a half step to A minor seventh, which is in the Aeolian scale right here. Okay, so continuing on from G diminished, we go to A minor, and then B flat minor. Now this is using the extensions of, so using the B flat and the B natural, and then B full diminished. So we have a whole bunch of choices, and some that are related and some that are not quite so related but can work together between the chords that come from these two things. So again, we're just gathering material here. I'm not going to worry about how all this is going to fit together. That's going to be for later on when I actually start the compositional process. Okay, so now I realized that I didn't really do a lot of development of melodic fragments using just the Aeolian. So I want to go back and I want to come up with a couple more ideas. So here's a couple more based on just the Aeolian. Remember the original scale. Can't even play the stuff I write. Here's another one. Whoops, sorry. Let me start over again. 49. Okay. Another one. I like to shift rhythms around a little bit, so you get this 1, 2, 3. And then I just wanted to play with something that modulated between the two scales. So we get into modulating scales, meaning going from one scale, finding a pivot note, and changing to another scale. So in the case of, let's say you're in the key of C minor, right? C. So if you go up the scale to E flat, you can modulate to E flat major. Right, just change scales in the middle. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There's some rules that you kind of want to follow. Sometimes you want to change on a direction. You want to change scales on a direction change. So in the case of, let's say we go from C major to G major. So I went up the C scale up to the 7th, and then down the G major scale. Right? There's a whole bunch of different techniques that you can use to do that. But anyway, what I wanted to do here was I wanted to modulate a line between the two scales, the Aeolian, the D Aeolian and the C D flat hex. So something to give it just a little different, just, you know, it doesn't have to be like, again, you know, unfortunately we've got some enharmonics here again. I got to double check my Sibelius files. That's the problem, is Sibelius will often default to, unless you designate a key signature, it will default to the wrong enharmonic. This should be A flat, just for continuity's sake. Okay. I will continue this process. All of this stuff that you see here, you notice I have double staves here. The reason I do that is I write myself notes. I'll start to sketch maybe rhythmic lines underneath it, or ostinato lines or something like that. And then, and I'll keep spinning this out until I feel like I have enough material derived from all of this that I can start taking pieces and putting it together and creating something. So here's just a 4-bar little thing that's using different ideas from all of this, you know, derived material, and using the Aeolian and hexatonic scales that we figured out. And I'm not going to play this on piano, but I will play it on, I did do a little mock-up of it here, thanks to the BBC Orchestra. And you can hear kind of what it sounds like. Okay, I'll play that again. Okay, one more time. Okay, so that is enough for me to actually start to compose a piece of music. I've got this little harp thing that might change different instruments. I've got a bass line that's based off of the scales. I'm not necessarily paying attention to harmony specifically. What I'm looking at is voice leading here. And here I have a melody that's going down, so my bass line is going up, and the melody goes down, and the bass line goes up and then down. And then as this melody continues up, the bass line works its way down again. Just, that was my concern. I was looking at lines that were moving in counterpoint fashion, but staying within the harmonic structure that was defined by the Aeolian and hexatonic scales. So again, it's nothing earth-shaking. It's just coming up with a starting point and then creating some material from that. And then as much material as you want. And this took about an hour maybe of sitting there, you know, starting at the very beginning, like I said, just with this scale. Could have been a major scale, could have been a minor scale, could have been a pentatonic scale. I love pentatonics and use them probably far too often. But there's a whole wealth of material that can be generated from a pentatonic scale. So like I said, about an hour to an hour and a half I spent on this. But at the end of it, I had enough material that I can confidently now sit down and start to compose a piece of music and start to flesh something out, either in my DAW, either in Logic or Cubase, or in Sibelius on the score, depending on how much, and what will happen during this process a lot of times is the ideas that start to come up, I'll start to think, oh, that sounds like a piece of library music that might be good for this or something like that, maybe Happy Strings or Dramedy or something, or maybe there might be something that comes up that I think, oh, that'd be good for an epic kind of thing. Other times it'll be, that might be kind of a small chamber piece, or kind of an indie kind of thing. So those ideas, that once you get the ideas going from your initial material, all the other ideas will start to flow. You'll just start to go, oh, this sounds like something that I bet I could use that for something like this. And now you're in a direction. Now you've got material, you've got a basic starting point, you've got some ideas, whether they're motivic or rhythmic or something like that, and you've maybe got even a melody in mind, and you've got a style that's presented itself to you through this process, and now you're off to the races. It's just a matter of getting it done. Okay, so that's the process basically from start to finish. Like I said, I would flesh some of that out a little bit more, maybe spend another hour or so generating some melodic ideas or rhythmic fragments or things like that, until I feel like I have enough material that I can start to assemble something into a cohesive piece of music. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that not everything that you come up with will be used. You want to exercise some good taste and and judgment, and use things, and and nothing's going to go to waste because you've got it and you can use it for another piece of music or something like that. But the idea is just to get the ideas going, and once you get them started, you'll be surprised how many ideas start to come to you, and then all of a sudden you'll have a piece of music. So I hope you enjoyed the process. With no secrets. I have no qualms about showing how things are done in any way. So if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. And if you hit that subscribe button, then you'll know when the next video comes up. I'm planning on doing lots of these kinds of things along with the sample reviews and other compositional walkthroughs. So thanks a lot for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.